Okay, hello friends. So this is familiar face, right? We already saw Shamik in action in last two videos, where we have discussed about a lot of situational and behavioral kind of questions. Very tricky situations. Some of the questions are really, scenario based. So if you've not seen those videos, please, the links are in the description. You can go and watch those videos. And you might have seen the thumbnail of this video, right? Uh, I mean, you may think like why there is so much negativity around safe and why Shamik is so not liking the way safe is being presented to everyone, that this is the only framework which is available if you want to scale. So some of the views you might heard from Shamik today may be totally different, but yeah, let's hear from his thought, his perspective of implementing a scaled version of Agile. So Shamik, welcome, and I'm sure like who are going to watch this session, this video, right? They will definitely get some different perspective. So friends, today just half an hour or 1 hour is all about Shamik, his thought, his practical experiences, his challenges, things which he thought that will be going to help when he's going to implement safe, but then things which are not work out and how we can learn from his experience. So this all session is totally on that practical aspect, because nowadays there is big buzzword on this scale agile. So yeah, it's like a myth which is around us. So let's hear from Shamik. Shamik, thank you, and yeah, welcome, and hope so. This controversial topic which we are going to discuss will make sense to other people, and it will give you some different perspective to other lot of people, right? So yeah, with this, Shamik, I'm now just zipping up, and welcome, Shamik. Thanks.
Thanks, Sudant. It was really an encouraging introduction. uh, well, being rebel sometimes help you to, be more familiar with something because, total acceptance, total submission never gets you to learn some, valuable questions. If you already fall in love on something without even knowing it, then you forget to ask the questions why it is so. It only happens when you have skepticism in mind about that particular thing, right? uh, think about your real life situation. When a boy falls in love with a girl, if you have already fallen in love with a girl, then you would ignore any shortcoming, whether she is getting a third division in the 10th standard, or any other thing, whether she is not maybe very much studious, not maybe not talking to you intelligently, but because she's so beautiful, or maybe she has attracted your attention, you just tend to forget, you tend to ignore the shortcomings. It may not be a kind of politically correct comparison, but something when you do not really digest properly, you develop some skepticism. Is it really worth learning it? Is it really um, understandable? Is it really helping us? Is it really adding value? When you start asking these questions to yourself, then you probably start getting the answer, and more you try to understand these questions, you try to answer these questions, you dig into deeper. Safe is a buzzword in the agile world for almost since its beginning because of its robust structure. Those who have gone into scaled agile framework, you have seen that super complex structure that actually repelled me on the very first sight. It was not like a beautiful girl that I should fall in love with. It was super complex structure. I did not really understand what is this, because till that time I heard that agile is about simplicity. It's about the core human sense, human values, etc. Then why there are so many, colorful things with a white background? What does it really mean? Fortunately, I got a teacher in my organization who tried to simplify safe in just few lines, and I still remember those lines. The way he said, I may or may not be completely agreeing with him right now, because I have worked on SAFe for quite some time now as an RTE, as a SAFe Scrum Master as well. So I have understood some different aspects of SAFe as well. But I still remember what he taught me on that day. He was saying, Scrum teams, they are self-managing. They don't need managers that way. Okay, so that's why there is no manager role or accountability in a Scrum team. So when Scrum becomes popular, the managers, they feel endangered. Okay, our job is at stake. What should we do? So they brainstormed, and that's how SAFe came out, so that it can accommodate each and every manager at different level. So SAFe is basically safeguarding the managers. That was one explanation he gave. We laughed at him, but to some extent, it is true. If you really understand SAFe at its full level, you will understand how does an agile organization works from top to bottom. It's such complex. It actually depicts a complete organization. Now you may ask me, then why this skepticism? If you really understand that it defines an agile organization and so on, then why am I skeptic? There are two main reasons which I always tell my students, my attendants, those who attend my session. One thing I just told, agile is meant to be simple. SAFe is not simple. If you have to remember agile, you have to just remember 4 values and 12 principles. If you have to understand Scrum as a framework, you just have to understand the 3 accountabilities, 5 events, and 3 artifacts, and then now there are 3 commitments as well. Nothing beyond that. It's just a 14-page document, the Scrum guide. But SAFe, when you go to Scaled Agile Framework, it's endless. It's just endless. I don't really understand why I have to really memorize and understand so many things. What value does it generate for me? Honestly speaking, I so far have not understood why it is really so complex. And the second thing for which I really do not understand why it is called SAFe, for saying like Scaled Agile Framework. By definition, what is a framework? Framework is something that tells you what you can do and what you cannot do. And why so? It never says how you do it. Those who are fan of football or cricket, maybe I can draw a parallel. The football game rule, what does it say? It has a rectangular field, 2 goalposts on the 2 sides, 11 players each side. There's 1 ball, 1 referee on the ground. 10 players, they can touch the ball with their chest, with their feet, with their head, but they cannot touch the ball with their hands, except the goalkeeper. This is what you can do, what you cannot do. Okay, 90 minutes game, after 45 minutes, there's a half time, and so on. The rule is universal for any football team around the world. But now, how will you define your team? How will you place your players? Who would be center forward? Who will be back? Who would be in attacking position? That actually defines who is going to win the match and who is going to lose. And that is decided by the team with the help of the team coach, team captain. The how part, that is what makes the difference from team to team. So the how part never is a part of the framework. Framework never says how you play that. Scrum, in that sense, it's a perfect framework. It just says what you can do, what you cannot do, what is allowed, what is not allowed, and why it is so. You have to do daily Scrum on daily. Why it is so? If you do not do it daily, what are the consequences? It is recommended that there should be 10 members in a Scrum team. What is the consequence if you have 11th or 12th or 13th member? It clearly defines, but it never restricts. You can still play Scrum as per your own understanding, as per your comfort level, as per your own organization's direction. On the other hand, I see The scaled agile framework is full of hows. It says how you do all these events, how you plan your PI planning event, what event comes after what, who speaks first, who speaks second. Everything is totally narrated in how format. And because it's full of how questions, how answers, I really do not want to call it as a framework. It is more of a methodology. Those who are fond of cooking, you must have seen cooking videos in YouTube or some other sites. For cooking, there are cooking instruction. There are two clear parts: ingredients and the process. Ingredient says, okay, you need these spices, you need rice, you need flour or whatsoever. That is the framework. And when it says that, okay, put the pan on the oven, heat it for 5 minutes, and then put oil on it, put ghee on it. Now put the spices. That is the how part. How you cook the item. And everyone follows the almost same recipe. Still, your cooking and your mother's cooking, it differs. So it is no more a framework. It is a methodology, because your cooking method is different from your mother's cooking method. In that sense, I really do not understand why SAFE is called a framework. Keeping this debate apart, SAFE has some positive sides as well. Now the question is, if SAFE has so many drawbacks, why do I really go for SAFE? It's a good question. I also asked this question a couple of times to my coach, to my teacher, and to myself as well. Slowly, when I got into the system, when I got into the so-called SAFE framework, I slowly understood what is the benefit of, not just SAFE, but any scaling framework. For example, Scrum itself has a scaling framework called Nexus. It is a mini scale framework. It normally deals with maybe 5-6 maximum teams. When we have to scale, the answer is when we cannot really do all the tasks in one team, in one Scrum team. Of course, in an organization, you cannot really run the show being one Scrum team. There are dependencies. There are collaborations needed with other teams, other departments, other areas. Scrum framework does not really address that. Scrum only works in a team. Whatever is written in the Scrum guide, that's in a team. But what happens beyond the team when you have some dependencies, some internal teams, some external teams, some vendors, how you manage those collaborations, those dependencies, those risks, those bigger level of planning, commitment from other parties, other teams, other departments. There comes the concept of scaling up. So as I said, Nexus does a mini scale. It normally works with maximum 5 or 6 teams. When you have the scaling up at a different level in scaled agile framework, then you have the answer. There are multiple ways of doing it. Now, when it was clear to me, I had another question in mind. Okay, I understood, but how do I really decode the complex picture that I see on the homepage of Scaled Agile Framework? My teacher smiled and he says, just consider SAFE as a 4-storied building. There are 4 floors. Okay, so the first floor is the essential SAFE. Second floor is the solution SAFE or the large solution SAFE. Third one is the portfolio SAFE, and fourth one is the full SAFE or organization SAFE. Now, why there are 4 floors? As simple as that. On the first floor, there are few agile teams. In SAFE, we call them agile teams because they may be Scrum, they may be Kanban, they may be DevOps, different teams. when they are working on a common purpose, I'm just trying to explain the way I understood. When they are working on a common purpose, we define that purpose and then we form a larger group. That is called the Agile Release Train, ART. And the common purpose is called the value stream. It's like we are identifying the value stream, we are working on the common value stream, and then multiple teams are forming up a larger group, which is called the ART. Now, it's appropriately named by trains because it looks like a train, exactly. Different compartments, they are coupled with each other, and then they form a train. Now, when you have a train with maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 compartments, you need an engine to run it. To run the engine, you need an engineer. That engineer comes into picture into the ART level. The engineer is called the RTE, Release Train Engineer, the person who actually runs the engine. Because you are now collaborating with multiple teams, there needs to be some additional features, additional events, and additional artifacts. What are the additional roles and events? As I said, Release Train Engineer is one additional person. How do I understand who is a Release Train Engineer? What is that person's roles, responsibilities? You go to Scaled Agile framework, there are, I think, pages of description what does a Release Train Engineer does and what he doesn't. The way I understood, it is basically a Scrum Master of Scrum Masters. It's not just Scrum Master of Scrum Masters, but a Scrum Master of all Scrum team. In the Agile teams, at the essential safe, I'm talking about the bottommost area. The Agile teams, they have their own Scrum Masters. Absolutely, because they are all Agile teams. Agile teams, now, why am I not saying Scrum teams? Because they may be Scrum, they may be Kanban, they may be DevOps. Whatever be the framework they're adopting there, they should have a Scrum Master. And the Release Train Engineer walks just one level above those Scrum Masters, those Agile teams. In a subtle way, it is introducing a hierarchy. Now, this RTE, the Release Train Engineer, is not a reporting manager for these Scrum Masters, in no sense. In Agile, we do not really believe in reporting, we rather believe in transparency. So these roles are created to enable and maximize the transparency. How do we do it? So it's kind of a Scrum Master of Scrum Masters that becomes the RTE. There is one more role, which is called the Program Manager. Program Manager is nothing but, I can describe it as a product owner of the product owners. And then there is a new role which does not fall in any virtual or real hierarchy, that is called the System Architect. So we introduced 3 new roles: System Architect, Program Manager, PM, and the RTE, Release Train Engineer. Among these 3 roles, the main driving personality is the RTE. Product owners, they normally collaborate with the program manager because now you are dealing with some bigger level of product vision, if I can say it. And system architect designs the architecture of how the value stream, the common purpose, is going to be achieved, how these teams will be collaborate, what kind of enablement they do need, etc. These are designed by the system architect. When I understood SAFe, The question that came in mind is how different is the safe Scrum Masters from the Scrum Masters? There are some difference. Those who have already appeared for the PSM exam, you know that Scrum does not really acknowledge anything about user stories or features or epics. That is not defined by Scrum. It is defined in SAFe. So when we are scaling up in team level, we are also scaling up in product backlog level. Here we have the user stories in the product backlog. I'm not getting into detail of how you write the product backlog items, how you write the user stories, because it's all common known format as a user something something. So you can write in that direction, you can write your own in your own style, you can write whatever way it helps you and your team. So the fact is user stories are there. Now, when the user stories, some user stories are fulfilling a common factor, they are forming something called feature. Those who are using Jira, you may come up with a challenging question that there is nothing called feature. We have epic, under epic we have stories. You are absolutely right. In Jira, the feature is called the epic. It is the Jira terminology. There is another epic, I will come to it later, but first keep it in mind, Jira, the software, I'm talking about Jira because I have worked extensively in Jira. There are other tools as well. For example, some use ServiceNow, some use Azure DevOps as tools, but most popular tool is Jira. Jira is only applicable at team level. It does not work at art level because it has no feature of implementing the dependency management, the risk management, or maybe handling with features, so-called, which is known as epics here. For that, there is another offering from Jira, which is known as Jira Align. It is a costly software and it is adopted by many organizations at different, I would say, with different enablements in it. So there are variety of licenses available. Based on the license you have purchased, you can get some features enabled or disabled or something like that. To cut it short, Jira Align handles the art functionality, whereas Jira handles the agile team functionality. So when you are having multiple user stories solving a common challenge, common problem, the common problem statement is known as epic in Jira. In SAFe terminology, it is called the feature. It is shown as feature in Jira Align. When you have Jira Align in place, it is synced with Jira. They use the same database at the backend. In any organization, when Jira is established as a agile management tool, along with Jira Align, so they normally point to the same database. And those who are familiar with Jira, you can easily see whatever is mentioned as epic in Jira, the same items with the same reference numbers, they are mentioned as features in Jira Align. So coming back to Scaled Agile framework, Jira Align is more aligned with Scaled Agile framework. So it uses the exact terms that is used by the Scaled Agile framework, SAFe. So the feature, there is a feature, which is shown as epics in Jira. So a feature contains of multiple user stories. Similarly, when multiple features, they make up a common solution, common purpose, they are called the epic in Jira Align. This epic is not present in Jira, because from here Jira Align is becoming different. So epic is played at a higher level, which cannot be handled in Jira. It is handled in Jira Align. So far, we have understood 3 different levels: user stories, features, and epics. It's a simple hierarchy. Multiple user stories consist of one feature. Multiple features consist one epic. Let's forget Jira. Now we are talking about on Jira Align terminologies, which is also the safe terminology. There are some basic differences between Scrum and the Scrum team that functions in safe, because in safe, Scrum teams, they do not really work as per the Scrum framework. There are slight differences. What are the differences? It is funny to know and good to know. Scrum experts, you know that the Scrum Master is not mandatory to be present in the daily Scrum. In safe, in the Scrum teams, in the Agile teams, Scrum Master is mandatory to be present. Scrum Master takes the note during the daily stand-up. They call it daily stand-up. They don't call it daily Scrum. Scrum says your sprint can be anything within 30 days time period. So it can be 1 week, 2 week, 3 week, 4 week, but not more than 4 week or 1 month. In safe, generally, we have 2 week sprint. There are exceptions. Some organizations, they also practice 3 week safe, 3 week sprint, but mostly we do 2 week sprint in safe. So every 2 weeks we have a sprint demo, not the sprint review. We call it sprint demo. And then remaining events are same. You have the sprint planning, you have the sprint retrospective. In many places, they are also called the iteration planning, iteration retrospective, iteration demo. So iteration and sprint, they are same. Iteration is basically a nomenclature from Scrum Alliance. And Scrum uses the word sprint. And SAFe majorly picks up the terminologies from Scrum Alliance. That's why it calls them the iteration planning, iteration demo, and all these things, and daily stand-up also. It's mainly a terminology from Scrum Alliance. Coming back, so in SAFe, the Agile teams, they have 2 week sprint. So every 2 weeks, they have to produce some increment, they have to produce some something in the demo they have to show. And they go like this for 4 sprints, one after another. After that, there is a special sprint or a special iteration. That is called the IP iteration or IP sprint. What is IP? IP is innovation and planning sprint. Basically, think of sprint from a sportsman perspective. You are running. First round of marathon race, you ran for 2 weeks. Immediately after that, you went for another running for 2 weeks, then again 2 weeks, then again 2 weeks. 4 times you are running continuously. Something is finishing, something is not finishing. Backlogs are being completed. Most of the times they are not being completed. They are overflowing on the next sprint backlog. Again, some things are not completed. They are overflowing on the next sprint backlog. Somewhere it has to stop. Somewhere you have to consume the overflowing work. IP sprint, IP iteration is the place where you normally can consume all the undone work, and then you prepare for the next 4 sprints, next 4 or 5 sprints. So this is a 2 weeks sprint to give you some time to take long breaths, get some rest, finish all your unfinished work so far, and then you can plan for next 4 weeks. What can we really commit at the high level? Normally in sprint planning, we do not plan beyond a sprint's duration, but here in a special event, we plan for forthcoming 4 or 5 sprints. This special event is called the PI planning, which is known as the backbone of SAFe. The entire SAFe runs on PI plannings. In this session, I'm not going to tell you about higher levels because it takes somewhere around 10 to 12 to 15 years for an organization to adopt SAFe at its complete level. Even 15 years becomes less for some companies, so they tend to do longer, they tend to take longer time to adopt full SAFe. Very less number of organizations in this world are there which are running on full SAFe. My experience so far, I cannot call myself an expert in SAFe. My experience is mostly limited into the essential SAFe, which is at the Agile release train. So I'm going to talk on the Agile release train limit only. I will just touch upon the next two levels. I will just tell you what are the new roles and how they are envisioned, but I'm not getting into detail. So let me talk about the essential SAFe. So what do we understand? 4 sprints and 1 special sprint called the IP sprint. In IP sprint, there are some activities. One is you take some rest, not in the sense that you go on holiday, but you finish all your unfinished work which were overflowing from your previous sprints. Try to finish them. That's why in the IP sprint, you do not pick up any new story, any new task from the product backlog. You just finish whatever you have unfinished. You probably make some time out for some specific trainings. There are some training needs that you can plan during this 2-week session, maybe 1 day, 2 days training session, and then you prepare for the PI planning event. It is a mega event. What do? We normally plan the entire event in Jira Align. I'm again coming back to the Jira Align. There are 3 or 4 inputs in the PI planning. The business vision, which is provided by the business stakeholder. Then there is an architecture vision, which is provided by the architect, system architect. And then the product owners, they come up with top 10 features that they want to work in the forthcoming PI. The entire duration of 4+1 sprint is called the PI, program increment. Now, it is planned at the high level during this PI planning. So what top 10 features they want to work on is decided and announced during this PI planning event. And then for 2 days, the teams, they huddle together to identify, get the commitment, the dependencies, the risks. Basically, for getting into the PI planning event, you need to do some homework. The product owners need to be ready with their top 10 features. Similarly, the Scrum Masters also need to be ready with their teams, collaborating with the product owner of what all dependencies may arise with, and then get the commitment at least pre-planned. We get the commitment during the PI planning. Now that we are working from home for last 1.5 years, we have not really seen a real PI planning happening. In real life, the PI plannings happen in a big hall where all the teams, they are grouped here and there on different corners of the hall. The RTE anchors the entire event. The 2 days event is anchored by RTE. It's facilitated by the RTE. They analyze, the team members, they analyze the features announced by the product owner. While analyzing, they define the user stories in it. The product owner describes what is it about, what is expected, what is the expected outcome, what is the success criteria, who are the stakeholders. If there is any clarification needed, even the stakeholders are present during the PI planning event. They come in, they join the conversation, and they clarify what is exactly expected. Based on that, the teams create the user stories. While creating the user stories, there are some dependencies which are identified, or maybe they are already identified before the PI planning. They are picked up. You have a dependency on some other team. Somebody runs to the other team and talks to the team member, talk to the Scrum Master. We have a dependency on you, can you commit it? Okay, they say maybe in the next PI on the second sprint, we can work on that. First sprint, we are already full. Second sprint, we can work on the item that can resolve your dependency. Fine, the team member comes back and says the team that, okay, team B says they can do it in the second sprint. If the dependency is resolved in the second sprint, then probably we can pick up the user story or maybe the feature for which the dependency is raised in the third sprint itself, because we cannot work on it till the second sprint. Now, if we start in the third sprint, can we finish it by fourth sprint, or some work will be left undone? How can we cut it short? How can we split it? How can we redefine the features? It's a big, lengthy discussion that keeps on happening with the product owners, with the team members, along with the Scrum Master. After 2 days, they come up with two different outputs. One is called the program board. Program board is a nice visual board in Jira Align. Jira Align has actually been designed keeping safe in mind. So if you are learning safe with Jira Align access, it will be easier for you to understand. So in Jira Align, you create a program board where you can see all the future 5 sprints: sprint 1, sprint 2, sprint 3, sprint 4, and IP sprint. All 5 sprints together in a single screen with all the dependencies, how the dependencies are marked with each feature, how the dependencies are interrelated, whether they are dependent on internal team within the art or they are external teams, internal dependencies or external dependencies, how are the risks, what level the risks are using the ROM technique. They are all visible in the program board. The program board takes its final shape. And another output of PI planning is program objective. So there are two outputs. One is the program board, another is the program objective. What is program objective? It is actually the finalized plan with the business values of what all features they are going to work on in the forthcoming PI, which exactly starts after the PI planning, basically the IP sprint. IP sprint is the container of the PI planning. PI planning happens for 2 days. Mainly in the second week of IP sprint, you have the PI planning. So when the second week ends, you start the next PI's first sprint. Sprint 1, sprint 2, and it goes on like that. So program objective has, again, 2 sections. One is the committed objective, another is the uncommitted objective. Committed objectives are easily visible in the program board, those which are already placed in different sprints. There are different swim lanes for multiple sprints, that sprint 1, 2, 3, 4, and IP sprints in the program board. You do a analysis, you clarify the features, you identify the stories, you identify and get the dependencies committed, you identify the risk and have a discussion on it, and then you put it in different sprints. Okay, this feature we can finish in sprint 1, this feature we can finish in sprint 3, so on. These are the committed objectives. Beyond that, there can be some features which you are still not sure. At this point of time, we cannot commit because we are already full. If we can finish it earlier, maybe we can take some of the items, some of the features from that bucket. That is called the uncommitted objective. That resides on the left side of the program board, which is, there is a wider column called unplanned features, unplanned backlog probably. So that is the uncommitted objective. When you are done with this segregation, okay, this is my program board, these are the committed, these are the uncommitted PI objectives, you show it first to the internal management. Internal management means you show it to your portfolio manager, program manager, and the RTE and the system architect. They review, and of course organization managers, the business stakeholders, they also come in and they say, okay, I can see you have this risk, that dependency, so maybe here I can help, or maybe you can remove that, you can move this from sprint 2 to sprint 4. This is something high priority, why have you put it on sprint 4? Let's bring it in sprint 2. This is prioritized. So a realignment happens. After this meeting, the final plan is rolled out, and then there is a vote of confidence that is taken. That's the last event that happens during the PI planning. So you do the vote of confidence. People just do their votes in a fist of 5. 1 being least confident, 5 being most confident. If it is overall the average voting value is less than 3, we have to replan. There is no other way. We have to plan for the replanning. Basically, we have to rerun the show. How can we really gain the confidence level? There must have been something wrong for which the confidence level is low, because so far we have collaborated with all the teams, all the stakeholders, all the management people, all the vendors, all the vendor managers. Still, if there is less confidence, that means something went wrong. We have to rectify this as soon as possible. If this goes fine, then we take the vote of confidence in a fist of 5, and then we go for a final retrospective. And this is a beautiful moment of, parting away with the PI planning output. I have seen in real life, when you have it in a big hall, teams sitting in different corners, naturally you need to book the logistics as well, because even for remote team members, remote teams, now it is the era of distributed agile. I have seen people working in different continents, different countries, different geographies. They are flown in, their accommodations are made available in nearby hotels. They are given foods. So during the PI planning session, because they are full 2 days event, so you have to arrange for lunch, etc. So how was the PI planning? How was the collaboration? How was the handshaking? To the point of how was the lunch? Can we improve the menu next time? How was the hotel accommodation? How was the hospitality? That's also discussed during the retrospective, and everything ends with a sweet note. We get ready for the next PI, and then the circle continues. This is how the main backbone PI planning happens in the IP sprint. And IP sprint also accommodates all your leftover work, your training plan, and planning for the PI planning. Now I'm coming to the last part. What additional meetings? Because now there are multiple teams working, we need to have some sync ups. What sync ups can we really have, and how overhead is that becoming? There are majorly 3 meetings held for sync up. Scrum masters, they represent the teams from the way of working, Scrum framework or Kanban framework perspective. And they normally, as I said, in SAFe, they take note during the daily Scrum. So they have the best idea about how the team is progressing sprint by sprint, day by day. So every week they meet together along with the RT, and they share the progress. It's not a progress report, but they share the progress so that everyone becomes aware of how we are progressing as an art, how the teams are progressing as an art, and how are we really mitigating the risks, how are we working on the dependencies. Is there still any dependency for which we are not getting enough cooperation? Is the commitment not being fulfilled? All these things are discussed in the meeting among the Scrum Masters in presence of the RTE, which is called the Scrum of Scrums. It's a very famous event. Many accounts, assignments, many departments in any organization, they tend to start these Scrum of Scrums even before adopting SAFe. So you are doing SAFe or not, that doesn't matter. They do Scrum of Scrums, but the main purpose of doing the Scrum of Scrum is this, that within an art, you have to do a weekly sync up of collaboration, how the dependencies are being addressed, how the risks are being addressed, how are we progressing to the common goal. This is Scrum of Scrums. Similarly, the product owners along with the program manager, PM, they have another meeting that's called the PO sync. And in an art, there is a leading coalition that is formed. What is a leading coalition? Leading coalition consists of the Scrum Masters, the product owners, the system architect, the RTE, and the program manager. And if there is a coach for the art, then the coach also. They together analyze, review the program board. They see the overall progress, how the program board is changing its shape, how the features are being completed sprint by sprint, is something getting delayed, is something being blocked, some impediments. They get into this discussion. It's also another weekly discussion with the leading coalitions. So the leading coalitions, they do a brainstorming together and find out what can we do to make it a better, smoother journey. How can we improve? They also, many times they create an improvement board. They create action items for them. It is just a Kanban board. You can create in Jira, under any project, you can create an improvement board. And then during this art sync meeting, maybe the Scrum Masters or the product owners, they can come up with some training needs, some software license needs. So they are put as the backlog in the improvement board. Sometimes the senior manager who joins in the leading coalition meeting, he or she picks up, okay, I take the ownership of approving the budget. Apparently, in an ideal situation, the product owner and the program manager, they should have the empowerment of defining and allocating budgets for art need, team need. If that is the case, then they take the decision. Otherwise, some managers, they come in, they do the enablement, they promise, or they probably express the limitations. Based on the outcome, we define our next course of action. How should the next sprint run? Is there any change in priority? Is there anything else that we need to take care of? That's how it happened. So majorly 3 events: Scrum of Scrum, PO sync, and the art sync. This is all you need to know about essential SAFe. As long as you are working in an agile release train, you don't need to really know more beyond that. There are plenty of things available in Scaled Agile framework, the House of Lean, the SAFe core values, and all these things. You can read them, you can forget them, doesn't matter. As long as you have the agile mindset, as long as you are familiar with some of the basic frameworks like Scrum or Kanban, you are good to go. Nothing beyond is required. Beyond that, when multiple agile release trains, they need to work on a collaboration. They have their interdependencies across multiple agile release trains. They form a system release train. And then there is a system train engineer, STE. With the STE, there is something called the solution manager, solution management. Even I don't remember all these names. I have to refer to something. The solution management and the solution architect. So another 3 roles that come up at portfolio SAFe: the solution architect, solution management, and the STE, solution train engineer. Solution train engineer works with multiple RTEs, like the RTE works with multiple Scrum Masters. It's the same way. So first floor is the essential SAFe, where there are multiple teams. Second floor, there is the large solution SAFe, and then above that, there are portfolio SAFe. There are again 2 new roles and some additional meetings. I would suggest this speech, what I'm saying for last 50 minutes, probably even more than that, it is for the first timers and the beginners in SAFe. So you need to know up to this level. After you spend at least 2, 3, 4 years into essential safe, then you can think of going to portfolio level. Maybe then we can have another session to explain what are there in the next levels. I stop here.
Okay, thanks. Thanks a lot, Shamik, sorry. So first of all, I really want to thank you, Shamik. You have taken your time, and the way you have explained all the things, the easy way, the way you have given the example is really great. And I think you have covered not all, I think each and everything, the way you have picked each and everything step by step. And if someone is new to the safe, right, I think this is a perfect guide or a pocket guide for them. Within a 1 hour, they will get to know a lot of things. People spend a lot of days, uh, in understanding safe and all. But I think the way you have explained it in a very plain, simple manner is really commendable, Shamik. So really thankful for that.
Yeah.
And yeah, we really hope that we will get more similar sort of insight on different topics in future from you, Shamik. So I really thank you for this great session, Shamik. I myself have learned a lot of new things, a lot of good metaphors which you have given. So yeah, it's a wonderful to have you again, Shamik. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Sunan, for giving this opportunity. I really enjoyed.
Thank you.
Yep. Have a nice evening.
Yeah.